It's Flames Nation Radio. Ryan Pike here, rolling solo this week. Shane is off this week with other commitments, so we figured let's just drop in a quick solo episode to catch up on what's been a very eventful, tumultuous, chaotic week in the world of the Calgary Flames. Before we get into it, as always, Flames Nation Radio is delivered to you by DoorDash and by Eau Claire Distillery, the maker of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. Typically, we like to think of Rupert's Whiskey as a celebration whiskey, a happiness whiskey, something that you savor to enjoy during the summertime. And this past week, unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot for Flames fans to savor. We figured let's just the last time we came to you with an edition of Flames Nation Radio, we were talking about possibilities of Johnny Gaudreau staying, going, and if he went, what do you do? And in the interim, it's been an interesting week. So we recorded last week on the eve of free agency. I believe it was a Monday episode. We posted Tuesday. And on Tuesday, the day before free agency opened, at about 6:18, our friend at Daily Faceoff, Frank Cervalli, tweeted that Johnny Gaudreau had informed the Calgary Flames that he was not returning and was going to free agency. So that was big news. Within the hour, by the top of the hour, 7 o'clock, the Flames had put together a press conference and media availability for General Manager Brad Treliving. And so those of us in the local media, some of us not in the local media, there's a bunch of people on there, we jumped on with Brad, and Brad confirmed what Frank reported, that Johnny Gaudreau was informed the club that he was going to free agency. And when he was asked, is it a possibility that Johnny Gaudreau could come back, check out what else is in the market and then circle back, Brad Treliving stated he didn't think so. He didn't think that was in the cards. And so at the time, Brad mentioned that, he didn't want to put words in Johnny's mouth, but his read of the situation from everything he had gleaned was that it was a family decision. And he shared that, Johnny Gaudreau and his wife Meredith are about to become parents. I believe Meredith is due in September. Congratulations to the Gaudreaus, by the way. That's really awesome. So they were slated to, become parents in September. And so, connecting the dots, Treliving suggested strongly that it was a family decision. And later on, actually shortly after that press conference, Elliot Friedman reached out to Louis Gross, the representative of Johnny Gaudreau, his agent, and Gross, confirmed as much. He said, he was quoted by Elliot Friedman in a tweet that, it was a family decision. So, okay, family decisions are family decisions. According to many reports, the Flames, this has been fairly widely reported. The Flames started the negotiations with Gaudreau at 8 years and $9.5 million. And their message to him was, if you tell us you want to be here, we'll figure out the money. And so by the time that Gaudreau had decided that he wasn't returning to Calgary, the offer had gone up to 8 years at $10.5 million. And then Gaudreau, went back and forth and sort of agonized about it, and then decided that he wasn't going to return. He was going to go to market. The following day, the Flames made some moves that we'll go over in a little while. But about 5 o'clock Mountain Time, Elliot Friedman reported that, Johnny Gaudreau is going to Columbus, which inevitably led to a lot of people going, Columbus? Really? It was interesting. What we've been able to glean is that at the time, Gaudreau thought he was going to go to New Jersey. No one has cap space. The Flames had cap space and or a willingness to create more cap space to accommodate Gaudreau's contract and other contracts that we'll get into. But Gaudreau decided, for reasons that we'll get into, that wanted to go back east. So he, at the time, he's a Philadelphia kid. He grew up in Kearney's Point. He went to Gloucester High School across the Delaware River from Philadelphia in southwestern New Jersey. But the Philadelphia Flyers, for various reasons, made various moves. They just don't have the cap space to accommodate Gaudreau at the money that Gaudreau probably would be meriting. Reportedly, the New York Islanders were in the mix, but not really high consideration. But Johnny Gaudreau thought that he was thinking, okay, I'll go to New Jersey. New Jersey, rebuilding team, but good young team, and more importantly, crap loads of cap space. Same state they grew up in, reasonably close to family. He kind of liked that. And then Columbus came in, and a lot of players who played for Columbus or do currently play for Columbus that Gaudreau knows. He spoke with, looked up the area, went, oh yeah, Columbus. So Columbus signed him, I believe it's 7 years at $9.75 million. Pretty good deal for Gaudreau. It's a considerable raise over what he was making before. And I mean, 115-point player deserves a raise. So now, at the next couple of days, there was, Gaudreau was asked in various media availabilities, hey, what's going on? Why not Calgary? And I think even he would admit that his performance in the press conference to introduce him in Philadelphia, or in Columbus rather, could have gone better. He was really, really excited about the new opportunity, about going to Columbus, playing. It's a class organization. Jarmo Kekalainen is a really smart general manager. Ownership throws, they're not unwilling to throw money at things. Nationwide Arena is a very nice arena. Is the arena that a lot of arena honks like me look at and go, that's what Calgary needs. And Nationwide Arena is one of the arenas that the Flames are trying to mimic with their new building, in terms of how the building itself is done, but also how the building is sort of integrated into the community. So they decided, the Gaudreau did a press conference with Jarmo Kekalainen. He was asked by the Athletics Aaron Portzline, what do you say to folks in Calgary? His answer wasn't great, but he said he'd be putting out something later. He was also asked by our pals Postmedia's Wes Gilbertson and Sportsnet's Eric Francis to expand on some of his answers. It was okay. It's been well reported. He basically felt that he needed to leave Calgary, and didn't really provide a lot of context for what drove that need. Later in the week, on the 17th, the Flames saw 3 players file for player-elected salary arbitration: Andrew Mangiapane, Oliver Shillington, and Matthew Phillips. None of these really surprising. Maybe Phillips would be the most surprising of the 3. Phillips is on he's on a 2-way deal in the AHL. He's played 1 NHL game, and you're probably not going to get a lot of big money ARB decisions that way. But the important thing for players for salary ARB is you're basically putting a clock on the negotiations. You're basically telling the team, okay, if we can't come to middle ground on a longer term deal, someone's going to impose a 1 or 2 year deal on us. So let's put a clock on it, but it's not unexpected. Usually salary arbitration cases are player elected, and there are these kind of situations where they're just trying to put rubber on the road a bit. Understandably, the Flames, their focus has been this offseason on Johnny Gaudreau. A negotiation of that magnitude takes on a lot of resources, a lot of oxygen, a lot of time, a lot of manpower. Same with Matthew Tkachuk. And so I can easily see those 3 guys just be going, hey, don't forget about us. You need to take care of our deals too. So not unexpected, not wholly controversial. Didn't really, not many people batted an eye at that. The following day, though, the Flames filed for club-elected salary arbitration with Matthew Tkachuk. Club-elected salary arbitration is much rarer. Best of my knowledge, the Flames have never, ever used the mechanism. They've gone to player-elected salary arbitration many, many times. They reached the hearing room many, many times. But the club-elected ARB, really, really, really rare. Fairly frequent. There's only 2 cases this year, Matthew Tkachuk, and before the qualifying offers went in, the New Jersey Devils filed for club-elected salary ARB with Miles Wood. So those are the 2 club-elected ones. So they're usually in very unique circumstances. So the unique circumstance with Tkachuk is this. Tkachuk had until Friday, or would have had until Friday, to accept a 1-year, $9 million qualifying offer from the Flames, and then that would eat up his last year of eligibility prior to becoming eligible for unrestricted free agency in a year. So on July 1st, 2023, Matthew Tkachuk he still is, but if he had just accepted his qualifying offer, he could have just, let's just say, he just wants out. He could unplug his phone, accept his qualifying offer, accept his qualifying offer on Friday, and then just play out the season and leave. After the Gaudreau situation, I don't think the Flames have an appetite for losing another player in free agency for nothing. And so The club elected salary arb basically kicks the can down the road a bit in terms of deadlines. As of this recording, we haven't had salary arbitration hearing scheduled yet, and so the hearing window is between July 27th and August 11th. So the Flames basically bought themselves, depending on when the hearing is scheduled, a week to an extra 3 weeks to figure out either a long-term deal for Tkachuk or a new home for Tkachuk. It has been suggested by many. Eric Francis of Sportsnet went on ESPN Radio in Edmonton, he went on ESPN Radio in St. Louis the day after Tkachuk was dragged into arbitration, and suggested that Tkachuk's days in this market are numbered. Having no inside information whatsoever, because I'm me, I would just strongly suggest that if things were going well, it's one, if the Flames were comfortable with Tkachuk accepting his qualifying offer, and then they would just figure out a longer-term deal later, they wouldn't have filed. Two, if things were going well and you figured, okay, they're almost done. This was the second highest priority for the Flames. They're working on a long-term deal. It's almost done. Again, I would suggest that they wouldn't have filed for club elected salary. There's no reason to, if things are going well, you don't go, 2 more weeks we'll get done. If things are going well, if you found middle ground, if you have, if you're seeing eye to eye on things, these deals can come together quickly. And they're not playing, they're not playing games, they're not traveling, they're not anything. So, your ability to get your representation and the Flames in a room and just hash it out, or do it over the phone or on Zoom or whatever, it's fairly high right now. It's higher than arguably during the regular season. So I would suggest that, this isn't a good sign. It's a sign that I do agree with Eric. I do think that there's probably some kind of a move coming, because the Flames, they've lost a few assets for nothing. If you look back, last few years, they lost TJ Brody for nothing, but that was the season where, they basically swapped out Cam Talbot for Jacob Markstrom, and they swapped out TJ Brody for Chris Tanev. That's basically a wash. You could say that, the Vancouver Canucks lost their guys for nothing, and they did, but the Canucks had guys they wanted to slot in, and, it was about fit and mix, and, I think everyone involved in those transactions, there's no hard feelings. I think, everyone is pretty upfront with each other about that. Similarly, last summer, the Flames lost Mark Giordano for nothing, but they didn't lose Mark Giordano for nothing. They lost Mark Giordano in an expansion process where everybody lost someone for nothing. And the Flames losing Mark Giordano allowed them to keep Rasmus Anderson, Noah Hannafin, Chris Tanev. And honestly, they lost, they didn't lose Oliver Shillington because they lost Mark Giordano. And so the Flames basically kept their entire top 4D together, or 3 of their top 4, and slotted in Shillington, and boom, everything worked. So it's unfortunate, but you can't really make parallels. But if you look at this summer, arguably, the song "Cruel Summer" comes to mind. You lose Johnny Gaudreau for nothing. It was a unique circumstance. The Flames had extensive talks with Gaudreau last summer, and they couldn't come to an agreement on a deal. I imagine the number the Flames would have put towards Gaudreau was based on the 2 prior seasons where Gaudreau was good but not great. He was a reliable player, but compared to his monstrous 99-point 18-19 season, I think the Flames were like, well, 2 out of 3 seasons you're pretty good, but you weren't 99 points good. So this is the number we're comfortable with. And similarly, the Gaudreau camp probably looked at it and went, yeah, but there's a pandemic and everyone's seasons were bad the year before. Like 1920 Flames, just everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And then the season ended early with a pandemic. And then the entire 2021 season was a bubble year, which was very weird and awkward. And, hockey players are creatures of habit. And for the better part of 2 years, they were completely thrown out of their comfort zone, which a lot of people were. But if you want to say, if you're any kind of agent going into negotiations saying that is not the real Johnny Gaudreau, that is not the real Matthew Tkachuk, that is not the real whoever. Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that argument, because I don't think a lot of us were at our best the last 2 years, 2 of the last 3 years, so to speak. So yeah, the number that the Flames put towards Gaudreau, he didn't want. The number that Gaudreau said that he would want, the Flames were comfortable with. So I think they're all like, okay, well, we'll revisit it in the year. And Gaudreau is very adamant through his representation that he didn't really want to get into negotiations during the season. He wanted to focus on having a season and basically being the Johnny Gaudreau he felt he could be. And it worked. In the interim, his family situation changed. Him and his wife were expecting a child. They weren't expecting a child a year ago. They are now. That changes things. Gaudreau had to deal with his family being away. He on Wednesday, he came out with an article in the Players Tribune, really getting into the nuts and bolts of his mindset. And a lot of it was just balancing family commitments with, he wanted to be, a good son, a good husband, and a good father when he becomes a father. And he feels that, this kind of situation being in Columbus, they're close to his family in Philadelphia, but not too close. It's people can't just randomly show up. They have to call first, but it's it's a 1 hour flight, 6 hour drive, no international borders, no this, that, the other thing. So it's relatively simple compared to what he's had to deal with the last few years with travel and being away from his family. So Gaudreau's a unique situation. It was just, in hindsight, should the Flames have signed him a year ago? I'm sure they would have loved to have signed him. Would they have been comfortable signing him at the number that he probably wanted? I don't think so. In retrospect, the number that he probably wanted back then is less than the number he got from Columbus. But you understand the risks, and I'm sure Brad Treliving's gonna have to wear that. And I think given the circumstances and given the risks involved, he was comfortable with it. And hindsight's 2020, but I don't think you can really rag on the Flames too much. I think they definitely deserve some criticism in terms of how they've sequenced some of their contracts. I'm sure in retrospect, should they have signed Gaudreau to a deal that walked him immediately up to free agency? They could have signed him to a shorter deal that would have done that, but they did it. I mean, they did what they did. Realistically, Gaudreau is about to turn 29. So the current deal he has, the 6-year deal he signed in 2016, ate up a year of free agency. So if he did a 5-year deal, it would go up to free agency and he would be able to walk anyway. He did a 4-year deal. Yeah, that would have brought him into one more year of restricted free agency. So in 2016, your question is probably just, do you sign to 7 or 8-year deal? Not, with Gaudreau having 2 years in the NHL and being good, but you don't know how good. Well, if I'm Gaudreau, I don't really want to sign a 7 or 8-year deal. You want to sign a 4-year deal? Then you're probably doing this a couple of years earlier. So I can understand, there's sort of some risk mitigation on both sides in terms of coming to the agreement they did in 2016. But yeah, I think that, they knew that they'd be walking up to the cusp of free agency and be vulnerable to this kind of decision by Gaudreau. And, it is what it is, the kids say. Meanwhile, with Tkachuk, I mean, my guess is, the Flames, when they're working out a deal, they probably talked to Tkachuk and said, do you see, with Gaudreau, they were asking him, do you see yourself here long term? And he wasn't sure because of all the things we got into. His family situation is becoming a parent, being far away from his family. I don't think he loved flying, for example, so mitigating that a bit. But for Tkachuk, I'm pretty sure they asked him the same question. Do you want to be here long term? And I'm not. If he had given them an unabashed yes, I think we'd probably be talking about a Gaudreau or a Tkachuk extension by now, or be very close to it. So I don't know. It's again, do you maybe you want to be in a situation where players accepting qualifying offers doesn't walk them right up to free agency, or signing deals that don't walk players up to free agency. But it takes two to make a deal, and with Gaudreau and with Tkachuk, you want to get your players in at a decent number, but you also want to be able to give yourself some flexibility. I would argue that the Flames might have valued getting a decent number on the cap over having that sort of contractual flexibility. It's a trade-off. And, the fact is they've gotten bit by 2 of these in one summer potentially. And, they end up losing Gaudreau for nothing. Granted, he had a great year, played a lot of great hockey with the Flames, and it'll be fascinating to see how they navigate what happens with Matthew Tkachuk, because, it's going to be a weird year. And, I've heard people, on Twitter, and I've done media hits the last few days, people go, hey, you think the Flames should rebuild? I don't know. I think the Flames have enough of their core pieces, their most important players, specifically, I'd say the defenseman and Elias Lindholm and get Jacob Markstrom. I think they have enough of their core guys, their important guys in the team-friendly deals. I think you got to maximize that value as much as you can. But I will freely say, you're not gonna get a Matthew Tkachuk player back in a Matthew Tkachuk trade. You're just not gonna do it. But can you get someone who can play in your top six? I mean, can you get someone to play with Mangiapane on either wing? Can you get someone to play, second line? Like right now, the problem is you can pretty much slot together like Flames 3 lines are what your top 9 right now is probably, let's just think out loud here. On the left side, you have Mangiapane and Dubé. Dubé's been bottom sixer most of his career. He's pretty good at it, but is he ready to be pushed up higher the rotation? I don't know. On the left side, you also have Jacob Pelletier, who hasn't played a minute of NHL hockey, hasn't played with NHL players in the preseason even. So you don't know what he is. He's good, he's very good AHLer. Can he jump in the NHL and be a good third liner right away? I don't know. Depends on the center, maybe. Your centers, I would argue that they have 2 top 9 centers in Backlund and Lindholm. Monahan was a fourth liner for much of last year. They got Kevin Rooney, who is another fourth liner. So they kind of have, a first line center in Lindholm, a second, third line center in Backlund, and then 2 fourth line centers in Rooney and in Sean Monahan. And your right wings right now. I mean, who do you got? You got Tyler Toffoli, you got Blake Coleman, and then you have a question mark. So, I'd say you could probably use a top 9 forward at any of the 3 forward positions, and it would help you. But there's still a chance you're going to have somebody playing over their skis, and I think that's the challenge. But who knows? I don't know what they need the most, but I know they kind of need a little bit of everything. So can you get one of those pieces back in a Tkachuk trade? Can you use the cap hits you would have been using on Tkachuk and Gaudreau to fill in a cap? There's still players available, Niederreiter's available. A lot of other players are available, are very good. I don't know if Nazem Kadri's the answer because he's quite pricey, but I mean, there's an option. But I don't know. I think that's going to be the thing that really how Tkachuk goes and what they get back for Tkachuk will tell you a lot about what they can maybe cannot do during the upcoming season. Free agent additions, the Flames have some new faces. I mentioned Kevin Rooney. He's most likely going to be fourth line center, maybe third line, depending on who else they get. Good player, played in New Jersey, played in New York with the Rangers. Decent, not amazing, but he's a good hand, reliable, predictable, not a lot of offense. The other likely NHL body is Nick Milosh, who was previously in the San Jose Sharks organization. He's big, he's French-Canadian, he plays the right side, he's a right shot defenseman. He's probably slotted in on the third pair with Nikita Zadorov. So it seems like the Flames have their top 6D close to the set, with depending on what Shillington does in restricted free agency and arbitration, but not a bad move. The other guys they added new faces. Goaltender Oscar Dansk back from the KHL. He'll be backing up Dustin Wolf in the American League. Defenseman Dennis Gilbert, who will be probably maybe a number 7 guy or playing top pair in the AHL. He comes from the Colorado Eagles and the Avalanche organization. Good offensive defenseman, hasn't really shown a ton at the NHL level, but he's got some upside in him. And you need puck movers in the AHL as much as you need anywhere else. And a couple depth centers, Ben Jones and Clark Bishop. Ben Jones comes from the Vegas organization. Bishop comes from Ottawa. Both guys have a couple, a little bit of NHL experience, not a ton. Bishop has the most. Bishop could be a 13th, 14th forward. He could be bottom 6, depending on what else happens. Again, need depth. The Heat were very good last year, but 4 of their most reliable goal scorers in Glenn Gaudin, Byron Froese, Justin Kirkland, and Luke Philp have left in free agency. So you need to replace those guys. So that is more or less what the Flames did in free agency so far. One last thing, the World Juniors are coming up. I know it seems weird that we're going to have World Juniors in the summer, but they're coming up in Edmonton. Summer is officially here. What better way to cool off than at the rink during the first ever Summer World Juniors? Single game tickets for the tournament are on sale now, starting at just $40. So grab your sunglasses, the brightest stars in the junior game are coming to Edmonton, and the World Juniors goes in Edmonton August 9th to 20th. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, are there going to be any Flames prospects at World Juniors? The answer is most likely one, maybe more. So Matt Coronado was on the USA's team when they were holding the tournament in January, and it had to postpone it. He's going to be at USA Hockey's camp for the World Juniors from July 24th to August 3rd. He is a strong contender to make the team. New Flame, second round pick Topi Roni, will be trying out for Team Finland at their camp later in July. He's good. I like Topi Roni. The way Finland's doing it is kind of interesting. Finland's basically putting together two teams. They essentially put together 50 players on two squads. They call them the main squad and the challenger squad, and they're going to be playing a bunch of scrimmages and stuff and seeing who stands out. So I would say that Roni has an uphill battle to make it because he's so young. He's 18, and this is a U20 tournament. He'll probably have a better chance next year, but it's a good chance for him to get on the radar for the World Juniors. So Roni will be in that camp. William Stromgren, Calgary's 2021 second round pick rather. William Stromgren, he'll be in Sweden's camp for the 2023 World Juniors, the ones that are Christmas time this year. Sweden already has more or less their team for this year's tournament set, so Stromgren will be trying to get on the radar for next year's team. Similarly, Jack Beck will be in Canada's camp July 23rd to 27th for the 2023 edition of Team Canada. So the interesting thing right now is Team Canada hasn't yet announced the roster for their camp for the August tournament. My understanding is they're trying to get everyone. They're basically trying to see if they can get everyone back from last year's camp. Some guys have said no. Some guys are sort of on the fence. It's August. When you go to an August camp, a lot of these guys are going to be pushing for NHL jobs, and having your summer of training interrupted by a tournament sometimes isn't the best thing for you. So we're seeing a lot of guys from pretty much across the international hockey world just going, I'd rather not. I'm going to try to make the NHL the month after, so it'd be kind of disruptive. So we'll see if there's any, if there's any more Flames representation at that camp. I think there's an outside chance that Rory Cairns gets an invite to that camp if they have openings. Because Rory Cairns was quite honestly fantastic for the Sioux Greyhounds during the last season, and he played a few games in the AHL playoffs. It was very good, but he's headed into pro, and will he want to necessarily have a disruption to his training? I don't know. So that's sort of where things are at. We're waiting to find out what happens with Matthew Tkachuk, and what happens with Matthew Tkachuk will basically be a tumbling period. So what we're going to end up seeing is some dominoes toppling. As I'm recording this, Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic has reported that Matthew Tkachuk he's told the Flames that he won't sign long-term. So that's kind of what we expected based on the moves. And so I think that they're trying to figure out a new home for him. And we'll see what that turns into, because he has a new home. Other players will have new homes, as in some assets are going to be coming to the Flames. So are they going to be great? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be draft picks? The more draft picks they get will tell you more or less what the trajectory of the team is. So it'll be, it's been an interesting summer, a very interesting week, very interesting 8 to 10 days. And I would imagine the next 8 to 10 days are going to be equally interesting. So that'll do it for this edition of FlamesNation Radio, the solo edition, the cruel summer edition, delivered to you by DoorDash and by Eau Claire Distilleries, makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. I'm Ryan, solo this week. I'll be back with Shane next week to sift through the comings and goings of the Flames so far. And we'll sort of see how the team looks, because I don't know if we have a strong expectation one way or the other how the dominoes are going to topple. So that'll do it for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in a week.